Okay, now we have a very special candidate. As we said before, we recently met Maureen Koetz when we were out in Bayside. She was out in Bayside giving out, palm cards together with John Cahill. She is a tremendous, remarkable, and very, very courageous lady, running against Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver in downtown Manhattan. And we're going to have Rosemary Sierra. Come on up, Rosemary. Rosemary is the president of the Nassau County Federation of Republican Women, and she's going to introduce another remarkable woman here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. If I knew this was going to be so much fun, I would have come last year, too. Okay. As a leader of a nationally based women political organization, one of our goals is to find women that are very qualified to run politics on the Republican ticket. And we have a very courageous woman here tonight, and she's remarkable, Maureen Koetz. And what makes her so special is that she just stepped up to run for state assembly against the incumbent Sheldon Silver, who is also the speaker. Maureen is going to do this with a very bold strategy because she's going to win, and we're going to help her to win.
Oh, good.
Her race has been called one of the most important in the state. She's a native from Queens, a veteran from the Navy, who serves as staff in the United States Senate, and as a government executive, she managed worldwide infrastructure and budget for the U.S. Air Force. Maureen has been endorsed by another political club, women's also, and they designated her as a game changer, and that was the Women's Campaign Fund. But more importantly, Maureen is going to provide us with new leadership, fairness, honesty in Albany, what we New Yorkers have been yearning for the longest time. She brings fiscal responsibility, transparency, accountability to the table in her efforts to defeat Sheldon Speaker. And as I said, she's going to do it. She's going to clean up the most corrupt state legislator in America that is ruled by an iron hand by Sheldon Silver. So please help me welcome our all-star Republican candidate, Maureen Koetz. It's my pleasure.
Oh my gosh, this is too much fun. I'm supposed to be unhappy and miserable. I'm running against Sheldon Silver. And I'm having a great time. I am having a great time. This is an absolutely amazing thing to do. I've done a few things since I was born here in Queens, way back in another decade. Rosemary mentioned that it's kind of courageous to take this on, and I hate to think that it has to be courageous just to get involved in electoral politics, but I guess it is. I'll take a moment to share with you a couple of the little anecdotal sayings that people have been collecting. I have a big map that I got from the Board of Elections of my district, and it's taped on the wall of my apartment. And every time somebody says something interesting to me, I write it on the outside of the map. So we're filling in. So far I've gotten things like, got insurance? Or you need a bodyguard. And then I had somebody ask me if I believe in evolution, and a couple of other things. So they're all going up on the board. They're all going up on the board. Tonight's amazing. I am so delighted to be here with you in Queens. I just can't even begin to think about it. You may have heard, I grew up in Jamaica. I came to you today by way of Washington, D.C., where I was having a meeting this morning with the administrator of D.C., city administrator. I hopped on the Amtrak, and then I hopped on the E-train, which they moved. Without asking me. But I hopped off on 71st Avenue. A couple of things looked familiar, including the steps we stood on to watch Pope Paul VI go by. back in one of those other decades. And then I hopped in a taxi cab, and I came out Union Turnpike, and I drove past St. Nicholas of Tolentine, where I graduated from grade school. So let me tell you, I'm almost verklempt here. So it's beautiful and wonderful to be with you. It's wonderful to know Phil and have met all the great people out here. And frankly, it's pretty exciting to take on this challenge. I came back to New York about 5 years ago after a career in federal service, and you heard a little bit about that. I was a naval officer. I lived in Sicily, so I know a little bit about corruption when I was stationed there in the Navy. I left New York. My dad repossessed cars, by the way, here in Queens. My mother was a bookkeeper. 2 of my uncles were Nassau County police officers, and my sister was a New York City police officer. So, you know, this is what I come from. This is what I know, and I'm happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with people like John Cahill and Sheriff Moss and Grant Lally, because John is right. We all came from a world where you don't stand idly by and watch corruption and this level of really, really horrific behavior go on. You stand up and you go out and you do something about it. And I know the Sisters of Charity of Halifax and the Sisters of St. Joseph would be very unhappy with me if I was sitting down in the 65th District and didn't decide to do something. I have had a career in public service most of my life. I've never been a candidate for electoral office, except for one time when Mary Lewis sent me to Girls State in 1974, and I'm happy to say I was elected governor. So watch out, Astorino. Well, it's wonderful to have fond memories of Queens and growing up around here, but realistically, I do remember New York where we had muggings and gasoline theft, where there were more X-rated movies. Somebody's got to do something about that door. There were more X-rated movies than there were Broadway shows. I remember the 70s. I remember the late 60s. I remember what New York was like when we were ethically and legally and morally bankrupt. And thank God people like Rudy Giuliani came along, and people like George Pataki came along. And people like John Cahill, who worked for George Pataki, are still with us. Back then we had broken windows and we had broken souls. And I remember that. I can honestly tell you, I remember my mother telling me, go somewhere else and go to school and learn something else and find something else out. And I'm very glad I did, but I'm even prouder that I'm able to be back here and be with all of you. But we're not going back to those days. We're just not going back. We're going to say no. We have to ask our citizens to respect each other. We've got to support our police. We've got to have the society we want to live in and raise our children in. But how do we do that when our elected officials are leading the parade to the courthouse? When it's all about profiteering and insider dealings. It's all about kickbacks and lawsuits. It's about everybody getting indicted and getting convicted, except the real criminals, by the way, ironically enough. We are not going to have the society we want to have until our elected officials reflect the ethics and the morality and the justice we say we want. And so the first thing that has to happen is Mr. Corruption himself, Mr. Insider Trading himself, Mr. Profiteer himself, Sheldon Silver, has got to go. It's time. Thank you. I mean, you talk about somebody who's past their useful life, you know, who's sell-by date is long gone.
Long gone. He sold it.
We're not going to be able to do what we need to do in Albany if he's still there. And one of the reasons I wanted to get into this race is because we have such a wonderful candidate for governor in Rob Astorino, wonderful lieutenant governor, wonderful AG. But I don't want them to get up to Albany and still have Silver sitting there with the same old ways and the same old obstructionist, the same old backroom dealing that we've been used to up until now. So this is an uphill battle. I'm not deluding myself, but I can honestly tell you, I'm getting more support from Democrats than Republicans down there in Lower Manhattan. It's not exactly a beehive of Republican activity. The Progress Club is down there. So listen, can I put some of you in touch with my friends at the Progress Republican Club, and maybe we can cross-pollinate a little on all this great energy and wonderful ideas and wonderful enthusiasm. We're getting back into that bankruptcy stage again, and not just financial bankruptcy. Like I say, we're on the verge of ethical bankruptcy and moral bankruptcy, and the corruption's got to go. So I'm going to ask you to think about this when you go to the polls on November. We're going to file chapter Republican. We're going to reorganize. We're going to re-energize. We're going to reemerge here. We're going to talk to the things that we need to talk to. We're going to make the world safe for all of our daughters. I've got a 24-year-old girl. She lives in Washington now. I would love to see her go to work in Albany or someplace like that. But I can't send her there until we've done what we need to do to clean that up. When I was 19 years old down in Washington, D.C., I was an intern for the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. Anybody remember that? It was a creature of Mr. Nixon's Law and Order campaign. And one day, I was in my dorm room, and the phone rang, and it was my boss. And his wife and children were away at the beach, and did I want to go out for a drink? Now, that was 1976. I was 19 years old. Now, I was kind of, sort of hoping that by now, that wouldn't be commonplace. I realize that it happens occasionally, but I was kind of, sort of hoping it wouldn't be commonplace. And if Mr. Lopez has taught us anything, he's taught us that it still is. But worse, and worse than even what I knew growing up and being in the Navy, you know, where women were split tails who squatted to pee and were going into court over the officer in charge's dead body. So I've seen my share of sexual harassment, but I really didn't think that what I saw in the 70s and the 80s would still be dogging us in the 21st century. So we've really got to send a message. We've really got to send a message about women in the workplace, about fair opportunity for our daughters to have careers and matriculate in the kinds of jobs. Why can't women be public servants? Why do they have to be thought of as public property? So to me, that level of offense, it's such a heinous crime. And to cover it up is even worse. Now, personally, I don't believe Sheldon Silver covered that up for the sake of covering it up. I think Lopez had a job to do, which was to put tax break legislation into a bill for 5 billionaire developers in Manhattan. Those tax exemptions were not anything those developers were eligible for. There is no way a building with a $90 million penthouse apartment needs to be property tax exempt. No way, no how. You're paying your taxes. I'm paying my taxes. We don't need to protect Sheldon Silver's ability to give tax exemptions to billionaire developers that are passed on to millionaire purchasers. But that was what Lopez was working on, which I'm pretty sure is why Silver wanted to keep him around. Those are the same 5 tax breaks the Moreland Commission was investigating. Because it just so happens that those 5 developers gave $1.5 million in campaign contributions, most of them to Andrew Cuomo. So, this is not Andrew Cuomo shutting down the Moreland Commission for the sake of shutting down the Moreland Commission. The Moreland Commission was looking at things that, where I come from, are tantamount to bribery. Now, if Joe Bruno is going to go down over honest services, I suggest that we've got a heck of a case against the governor. We've got a heck of a case against the speaker. Well, Lopez has lost to the ages. We don't need to worry about him anymore. But there's a whole bunch of other people that we should be talking to. Now, I'm in Manhattan, so development that gives away public assets and gives away public fiscal you know, our tax dollars that we can be using for other things. I think that's just as much theft as anything else. And it's wrong. On top of everything else, it's just downright wrong. So we're going to be talking about that a lot. I've been talking to Phil. I'm probably going to take myself up to Albany and file a J-Cope complaint myself. If Mr. Schneiderman doesn't want to do it, and if all the people who should be talking about this don't want to do it, well, then we'll do it. The evidence is there. We've already got lots of organizations who've tracked all the campaign donations. We know there's 1.5 million that went into the pockets, mostly of Democrats. And we know that they got those tax exemptions. As Mr. Cuomo is fond of saying, ipso facto. Or res ipsa loquitur. I took Latin at Mary Louis. The thing speaks for itself. So thank you all very much for having me as your guest. I can't tell you how honored and thrilled I am, although I obviously frightened everybody away. The one thing I will leave you with is I am going to invent a suit for women that has inside pockets so that we can go like this when we're getting up at podiums to speak just like the men. I hope I see all of you much more. We're Koetz2014.com. Check out our website. More shots of the glamorous me. And please come join us in Manhattan anytime you can. I can vouch for the E-train. It gets you there in no time. It runs express. Goes right to the World Trade Center. So thank you again. Thanks to Phil. Thanks to Joe. I appreciate being here.
Let's give her a big hand, folks, for coming from Manhattan. Let's support Maureen's campaign. Let's follow up with her J-Cope complaint. We'll all get on board, and we'll all take Shelley Silver down and the rest of the bums. We're going to throw the bums out.